Feedback Learnex. English forever.
What will be your generational legacy? This week on Feedback Learnex, we're taking a look at centennials, or Generation Z. The term generation cited by Gilbert in 2007 is referred to an age group that shares throughout its history a set of training experiences that distinguish them from their predecessors. Generations arrive, consolidate, complete their cycle, and give rise to another. For example, the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation and or millennials, but now there is a new generation that is marking our society, centennials or Generation Z. It is considered centennials to those people born after 2000 who have lived under the protection of mobile devices. Also known as Z generation, will be, along with the millennials, worldwide demographic majority in the year 2020. Online purchases and reviews of other users mark their way of consuming. The brands examine them with a magnifying glass, looking to speak their own language to win the pocket of the consumers of tomorrow. They are born with a smartphone in their hands. Social networks are a way of life. They communicate instantly through messages and emoticons and do not remember that once the world lived disconnected. This is how the U.S. bank Merrill Lynch defines the centennials. This entity has produced a report entitled New Kids on the Block, Millennials and Centennials Primer, that analyzes how generations Y and Z understand consumption, finance, and technology. The centennials, those currently not over the age of majority, and the millennials or Generation Y, who are between 19 and 35 years old, now number approximately 4.4 million people worldwide, according to the newspaper in the country. The figures suggest that in 2020, both will represent 59% of the population of the planet, and for this reason, both generations are in the spotlight of the companies. Millennials and centennials have revenues of $21 billion. 88% of these young people live in emerging markets. 90% own a smartphone, and during 2025 will control 47% of the funds of the planet. These are just some of the revealed data throughout this research. Brands have realized that grouping these generations under one roof is a mistake, since despite the fact that both groups are digital natives, centennials have not known life without social networks or the internet, and this has an influence on their way of living and consuming. Centennials follow a pattern of behavior different from that of millennials. According to Business Insider, today's minors prefer to invest their money in products instead of experiences, unlike Generation Y. Z generation likes to own and buy. Also, when they do, they prefer the online route. So says the Piper Jaffray's company that has analyzed how children spend their money online. However, centennials are not satisfied with any online shop that tends to opt for those that also have a physical location. These young people make most of their purchases through their smartphones, and those who are inclined to approach the store before buying often interact with the brand through social networks. In addition, Generation Z, more than any previous generation, relies on reviews or recommendations from other consumers. Experts indicate that there is a gap in the way in which both generations use social networks. The centennials usually transmit through their own images. Sending files with Snapchat and sharing photos on Instagram is the best way to connect with them and know their interests. Numerous publications try to explain how millennials are the new generation that not only has tastes and values different from those of their predecessors. These young people are also pioneers in the adaptation of new technologies, and their uses and customs end up being, in most cases, adopted by previous generations. Generation Z seeks to keep their things away from family and are volatile, so they love platforms like Snapchat in which the content has a certain lifetime. In addition, centennials have a greater ability to decide. As the New York Times tells us in one of their articles, the ability of centennials to maintain attention is very short, and they soon return to their smartphones, tablets, and computers, tolerating very little traditional advertising. They are accustomed to sensory overload, and for this reason, the amount of time they need to filter through the information is greatly reduced. The Publicis Agency estimates that centennials' average attention has been reduced to 8 seconds, while millennials are capable of being concentrated for about 12 seconds. To get to Z generation, you have to communicate as they do. The trick is to send short messages, easy to understand and digest. With centennials using a more intuitive visual language than previous generations, for example, emoticons. Generations after generations mark history, and we have to update ourselves day by day to go hand in hand with the development of humanity. So tell us, after everything you've seen and heard on this week's edition of Feedback Learnex, what's your generation's legacy?
Feedback Learnex, English Forever. Estamos en sintonía. Feedback Learnex, English Forever. Feedback Learnex.